We grow up holding an invisible map, where everything is expected to have a beginning and an end. You study to graduate. You work to get promoted. You love to be loved back. And you live, hoping that one day you'll finally feel like you've arrived. But strangely, the farther we go, the more lost we feel. The harder we try to achieve, the more empty we become. What if this very idea, that we must always get somewhere, is what's keeping us from the only thing that matters? This moment, right now, where we're breathing and alive, but not really here. Today's story isn't about a destination. It's about a journey with no finish line. A quiet return that needs no reason. A moment of letting go, not of losing, but of releasing. Because in the world of meditation, to arrive doesn't mean gaining something. It means daring to let go of what we've been holding on to. You might be clutching something without even realizing it. An old relationship, a perfect image of yourself, an unfulfilled dream, or even the need to always appear strong. And then you feel tired, heavy, overwhelmed, but still too afraid to stop, scared that if you let go, you'll be left with nothing. But no one ever said that letting go means losing. To let go simply means to stop resisting yourself, to stop forcing, stop controlling, stop expecting, so that the mind can finally breathe as it is. This video doesn't give you answers. It's an invitation to step into a journey that doesn't need an ending, so you can be free along the way. Because sometimes, it's only when we loosen our grip that we're finally able to receive life fully, just as it is. The journey where arriving isn't the goal. A meditation on letting go. Some journeys have no destination. Some forms of letting go are not about giving up. And sometimes, we realize it's not that life is too heavy, but that we've been holding on to too much. The journey where arriving isn't the goal is a slow, meditative story where you don't need to become someone, achieve anything, or fix yourself. All you need is to return to who you already are with honesty and gentleness. Across 3 quiet chapters, you'll be invited to walk through the deeper layers of your mind, meet yourself in silence, and learn to release, to breathe, to live, and simply to be. If you're tired of always being strong, if you feel lost in the pressure to succeed or get there, perhaps this is the pause you've been needing. Part 1. When beginning means to stop, not to go. In a small village hidden behind a grove of bamboo, there lived a quiet man by the river. People called him the meditation hermit, not because he held a grand title, nor because he ran a temple or took in disciples. It was simply that anyone who passed by his humble hut seemed to leave a little lighter. No one could explain why. Some said it was the sound of wind brushing through the thatched roof. Others said it was the stillness in his eyes, deep and calm like a lake. And then there were those who believed it was because he never tried to get anywhere. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves covered the path, a young man came seeking him. His eyes were restless, anxious, like someone who had traveled far, yet still didn't know where he was. He bowed deeply and respectfully placed his palms together. "Master," he said, "I've been to many places. I've studied many things. But the more I learn, the emptier I feel. I want to learn meditation, to find peace. Please show me the right path." The hermit smiled and invited the young man to sit on an old mat in front of his porch. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he quietly poured a cup of tea. The young man received it gratefully and waited. A minute passed, then 5, then 15. Still, neither of them spoke. Only the soft rustling of bamboo in the breeze. At last, the young man asked, "Master, where should I begin?" The hermit finally looked at him and gently asked, "Where are you standing now that you want to begin?" The young man hesitated, surprised. I'm not sure. I feel lost." The hermit nodded. "Then you don't need to go anywhere. You only need to stop." That simple sentence cut through the fog in his heart like a sudden blade. He had always believed that peace lay somewhere ahead, after more effort, more knowledge, more doing. But this old man simply told him to stop. "Master," he whispered, "if I stop, isn't that giving up?" The hermit chuckled, not mockingly, nor with condescension, but like wind brushing the bamboo leaves. "No, my son. Giving up is when you run away from yourself. Stopping is when you choose to return." And then he told the young man a story. A traveler once walked through mountains and rivers with a heavy bag on his back. The farther he went, the heavier the bag became. But he kept walking, believing that somewhere ahead, he would understand why he had to carry it. Yet no one welcomed him. Nowhere made him feel complete. One day, he collapsed by the roadside and finally opened the bag. Inside were things long outdated. Other people's expectations, fear of being left behind, an illusion of a successful self. He had carried it because he thought he needed to. But he had never once asked, "Is this still serving me?" The hermit looked into the young man's eyes and said quietly, "Your mind is the same. It's carrying too much. And you keep walking, hoping it will get lighter ahead. But nowhere is light, unless you choose to put the bag down." The young man was silent. For the first time, not because he didn't know what to say, but because something had stilled inside him. A stillness not born of knowledge, but of no longer needing to know. From that day forward, he didn't leave the village. He didn't study doctrines or practice complex meditations. Each day, he simply sat. He watched leaves fall, listened to the birds, washed his hands, cooked rice, and observed each breeze passing through him. Some days, his mind still tangled. Old memories returned. Worries crept in at dusk. But this time, he didn't fight them. He let them come, stay, and go, like clouds drifting across the sky. One day, as he sat quietly on the porch, a traveler walked by and asked, "What are you waiting for?" He smiled, "I'm not waiting for anything. I'm just here." The traveler laughed and shook his head, walking on. But the young man didn't mind. Because he understood. He, too, had once believed that doing nothing was a waste of time. But now, he was doing the most important thing of all, letting go of the idea that he always had to do something. In meditation, there is no reward as the world sees it. No medals for sitting longest. No title for the most enlightened. There is only the quiet courage to stay with yourself, without judgment, without running. Whether it's pain, shame, or just silence, if you dare to face it, it softens. Not because you've become stronger, but because you've stopped resisting. That's when the true journey begins. Not, "I must arrive somewhere," but, "I am here." And in this way, even the most ordinary moment can become meditation. No need for bells, no beads, no perfect posture, just presence. Because peace was never at the end of the road. It was always here, waiting for you to stop long enough to notice. Part 2. Each step is not to advance, but to return. Winter arrived in silence. On the bare branches, the wind no longer whispered but howled, like the murmurs of ancient forests. The young man from before no longer carried restless eyes. But something inside him still felt unclear. One early morning, when breath still rose as mist in the cold air, he turned to the hermit and asked, "Master, I've learned to sit in stillness. I no longer panic like before. But there are still days when I feel sad for no reason. Some mornings, I wake up and don't know why I'm alive." The hermit wasn't surprised. He simply nodded and smiled softly, as if he had been waiting for this question all along. Sadness without reason is often sadness that has been buried too long, untouched. When the mind begins to quiet, it reveals what you've hidden. This isn't a failure. It's a sign you're truly coming home. The young man fell silent. Deep down, he understood. Before, he hadn't been untroubled. He had simply been too distracted to feel it. He always did something to avoid facing the emptiness inside. But now, with nothing left to distract him, that emptiness surfaced. "So what should I do?" he asked, "when that feeling returns?" "Nothing," the hermit replied. "Don't push it away. Don't name it. Just observe it like morning mist. If you try to catch it, it disappears. If you reject it, it expands. But if you stay still, it dissolves on its own in sunlight." That morning, for the first time, he didn't try to fix the sadness. He didn't reach for books, didn't meditate to drive it away. He simply sat and let the sadness rest lightly on his chest, like a leaf falling onto a pond. And strangely, he wasn't afraid anymore. In the days that followed, he began to walk. No clear reason. It was just that, after each meditation, his body wished to move. He walked through the small forest behind the hermit's hut, taking each step slowly, not as exercise, not as mindful walking, just walking for walking's sake. And in doing so, he realized something. Each step didn't carry him forward, but brought him closer, to life, to the rawness of the present. One day, as he wandered, he came across a small tree bent and broken. He knelt beside it, thinking to lift it, but hesitated. He realized, if he moved wrongly, he could harm it more. So he did nothing. He simply sat by it for nearly an hour. Not to pray, not to rescue, just to be with something in pain. Later that day, he told the hermit what happened. The old man said, "You just meditated more deeply than ever before." "But I wasn't meditating," he replied. "Yes, you were," said the hermit. "Meditation is any moment you are truly present with something, without trying to change it." From that day on, life appeared different. Before, everything had felt like a list of tasks: cleaning, cooking, washing. Now, each chore became a chance to return. While washing dishes, he felt the cool water through his fingers. While doing laundry, he smelled the lingering sun on the fabric. While cooking, he listened to the bubbling of the pot, watched the greens turn color in heat, and he realized life was never lacking in miracles. He had just never slowed down enough to notice. One afternoon, a traveler stopped by and asked, "How long have you been meditating?" He smiled. "I don't know. I stopped counting." "Have you realized any great truth yet?" "No," he answered. "But I'm learning how to stay still even when no truth comes." And that opened the real door. Because in meditation, what we hope for often never arrives. But if we stay long enough, even when nothing happens, then the not happening itself becomes the miracle. Peace is not a mountain peak to be climbed. It is a quiet valley that has always existed within. The mistake is thinking we must ascend to find it, when all we ever needed was to sit down and listen. Only when the mind stops racing to find answers can it become still enough to hear its own voice. Part 3. Awakening is not escaping, but staying with everything. The years passed silently, like a stream carving its way through stone. No one knew exactly how long it had been since the young man first arrived at the little hut by the forest. His hair had grown long, and his eyes had softened like a stream after rain. Yet no one called him a monk, nor did anyone see him as a disciple. He was simply someone who lived there, like the trees, like the rocks, like the drifting clouds over the hill. One early summer morning, while gathering firewood, he suddenly remembered his parents, those faces that once made his heart tremble. Memories returned like wind rushing through an open window. The night his mother cried when he dropped out of school, the slap from his father when he refused to join the family business. Those times he wandered crowded streets, but no one called his name. His chest tightened. All those years, he had believed he had let go. But in that moment, he realized, letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means having the courage to face without fleeing. He sat down and closed his eyes. Not to meditate, just to allow himself to feel. To feel the regret left unspoken. To feel the anger from being misunderstood. And to feel a part of himself still longing to be embraced. In that stillness, the hermit's voice seemed to arise, not from anywhere external, but from within. Letting go isn't turning away from emotion, but releasing the need to fight it. When you hurt, breathe with the pain. When you miss someone, let your heart soften. That afternoon, he wrote a letter, not to send, not even to sign, just to pour his heart out. The words flowed like water, like layers of the soul long suppressed now rising to speak. When he finished, he burned the letter in the small garden behind the hut. The ashes lifted and scattered in the wind. And he understood, forgiveness doesn't need witnesses. Letting go, in itself, is enough. Another day, a small child wandered lost into the forest, crying in fear. The man picked the child up and soothed him with pieces of dry bread. The child asked, "Mister, where's my home?" He smiled gently. "I may not know the exact way, but if you're not afraid, I'll walk with you. Every step we take brings us closer to the light." The child stopped crying, and in that moment, he realized something deeper. Letting go isn't standing still alone. It's the courage to keep walking, without carrying the old pain. And then, like a stream that has flowed far enough, he decided to leave. Not because he was tired of the place, not because he sought something new, but one morning, sitting under the familiar Bodhi tree, he heard his heart whisper, "Now that you know how to stay with yourself, you can stay anywhere." He didn't say goodbye to the hermit. Deep inside, he knew there are people whom, once met, are carried within forever. His journey now had no name, no destination. Each day was a step, a meeting, a simple meal. But the way he looked at the world had changed. No more judgment. No longer searching for meaning in everything. Instead, he accepted that some things are only meant to be felt, not understood. People often believe enlightenment is something grand, radiant like divine light. But to him, awakening was this. No longer needing to become someone else. Just sitting with oneself, without hiding, without striving. One day, a stranger asked him, "If you could say one thing to the world, what would it be?" He looked up at the sky and said, "Stop running. Not because there's nothing ahead, but because maybe the most beautiful thing is right where you're standing." And he smiled, not from joy, not from sorrow, but because at last he understood. The journey isn't to arrive, it's to return. And the place to return is this very moment. There is a place not found in the destination, but beneath every step we take. When we first begin the path of mindfulness or inner cultivation, many of us carry a belief. One day, I will be enlightened. One day, I'll reach a place within myself where there is no more suffering, no more fear, no more old wounds. We carry with us beautiful hopes and images of a final stop, a quiet harbor where pain dissolves like mist at dawn. But the further we go, the more we realize. Awakening is not found at the end of the path. It isn't a distant destination. It lives in the very moments when we dare to pause, in the deep breath we take right now, in the honesty of how we look at ourselves, in the courage to sit with sadness without turning away. The young man in our story didn't attain anything. He did not become a teacher, nor did he preach. He simply learned how to come home, to his body, to his breath, to his truth. He stopped striving to be peaceful. He simply learned how to sit with himself, even when he wasn't at peace. And in that stillness, transformation quietly occurred. We are taught by society to keep moving forward, to overcome, to become better than yesterday. But in meditation, sometimes the only thing we need to do is pause and breathe, to allow what's here to exist, without fixing it, without forcing it. Because there are wounds the mind cannot resolve. Only presence can heal. Letting go doesn't mean rejecting the world. It isn't about withdrawing into isolation. It is the ability to live fully in the midst of chaos and yet remain still and grounded within. It's when we continue washing clothes, cooking meals, raising children, working jobs, yet no longer resist what is. No longer needing things to go our way to feel at peace. And the strange truth is, when we stop seeking, what needs to be seen appears. When we no longer strive to become enlightened, it is that very act of surrender that becomes true awakening. There's an old saying, no one steps into the same river twice. But perhaps for the meditator, it's more like, no one walks the same path twice, if the second time, they step with awareness. Meditation does not change the world outside, but it changes the way we see it. The same sound of rain becomes different when the heart is quiet. The same sorrow becomes soft when we no longer fight it. The young man eventually left, not to search for something new, but because now, every place he goes feels like home. He no longer fears being lost, no longer panics about the future, because he understands, the place we most need to return to never left our footsteps. And for each of us, this journey is never far. All it takes is one pause, one deep breath, one moment of asking, where am I running? Can I stay, just for now, with myself? If the answer is yes, then perhaps you've already stepped onto that path, the path that leads nowhere, and yet brings you home to your truest self.